Hey guys, today I want to introduce you to this new indie studio called Apple. You've probably never heard of them before. They're real underground, tiny budgets, simple premises, just really raw, you know? Just kidding. You'd think having $1 trillion would allow you to make spectacular films, but apparently it just gets your foot in the door. Hello and welcome to my channel. Here I review movies and television shows. Today I want to talk to you about Apple's new film, Wolfs. It's a crime comedy about two criminal fixers being hired to do the same job and bonding over the experience. It stars Brad Pitt and George Clooney as the two laundrymen with the same personality, and Austin Abrams as their adorable little screw-up. Jon Watts wrote and directed the film. Okay, as far as movies go, this one isn't all that special. It's hoping that you're really into the dynamic between Pitt and Clooney and that frenemy banter is your favorite type of comedy. If you are, it actually does provide quite a bit of back and forth with just enough emotional weight to sell the story. The rest of the film isn't overly interesting or well executed, but it's watchable. Wolfs starts with a long drawn-out opening that sets the stage for the film. A woman panic-stricken after an accident calls for a special kind of help. Then it introduces us to our two protagonists and lets us bask in the awkwardness and hatred between them. When the dead body they're hired to get rid of wakes up, they find themselves with a whole new problem. Slowly, the two of them start to notice similarities between themselves and their totally hetero bromance begins. The story spends a lot of time giving you what it promised. Two professionals arguing like children, and it doesn't do much else. The plot is drip-fed to you slowly over the course of an hour and a half, and it's like drinking molasses. Just a thick, slow-moving goop. It's fairly boring outside of the humor with the characters visiting a location, meeting a wacky new personality, arguing a bit, and then moving on to the next part of the story. This process repeats 3 times until the finale where we get a single scene of action. After that, the ending drags on for a bit so that they can set up a sequel and throw in a little twist. Admittedly, the twist was interesting and got me momentarily excited for a second film. Unfortunately, I doubt I'll remember much of this one by the time it comes out. Cast-wise, there isn't much going on. You have Brad Pitt and George Clooney doing a buddy cop routine and transitioning from enemies to friends. Then you have Austin Abrams playing a naive kid caught up in a bad situation. On the side, there's a reluctant doctor, an intimidating gangster, and a terrified district attorney. Everyone's performance is solid, but there isn't much for anyone to do besides the two leads. Abrams gets to do a couple of good speeches and be a bit annoying, and the DA gets to do some fear and guilt reactions. There's also a few jokes, but they're fairly few and far between. Pitt and Clooney are the highlights of the film, but their dynamic feels like a rehash of Ocean's 11 but without a lot of the fun. In that movie, they were charming thieves stealing from a greedy casino owner. They were charismatic and easy to root for. In Wolfs, the two of them are both playing bitter, somewhat arrogant people that make quips at one another for an hour. It's hard to take either of their sides because they're both acting like children, and neither of them does anything redeemable until much later in the film. They don't have any big emotional moments either. They're just quipping and exposition dumping. When their time to shine comes, they put on subtle performances that aren't very memorable. Their dynamic has definitely seen better days. Visually, the film is kind of boring. It's got roughly 4 locations, and they're bare-bones places that aren't interesting to look at. They've got 2 hotel rooms, a club, and a warehouse. Outside of that, a good portion of the film is spent watching them converse inside of a car. The conversations aren't edited in interesting ways. The conversations aren't thought-provoking or meaningful, and the actors aren't doing much physically. The only real positive here is that it's clear and easy to follow. For standout moments, there are 2 slow-motion scenes in the film, but they're just bizarre. They're not highlighting a cool piece of action or anything like that, and they come out of nowhere. The first time it highlights Pitt's reaction to a guy being hit by a car, and the second time it's to show off a 3-second visual gag that feels horrendously out of place. Toward the end, there is one action scene, but it's filled with a bunch of CGI bullets and poorly handled weapons. It's over in seconds and doesn't have much impact. This would have been the place to use that slow motion. We could have seen them kill a bunch of gangsters like assassins. Instead, we got slow-mo Clooney throwing a gun badly. Sound-wise, the film uses bare-bones instrumentals that make it sound like an old porno. There's about 4 tracks, and they're all made using a combination of synths, drums, and a piano. They add a bit of a mysterious vibe to the film, but quickly become annoying as they tend to use them repeatedly. The music doesn't have much of an impact on the film, but does add the tiniest bit of emotion during the right moments. Personally, I was kind of bored watching the film. Not really into frenemy banter, but I also didn't like the characters. They just seem miserable to me. The rest of the movie doesn't have much to offer either. As for a rating, I'd give this film a 4 out of 10. Remember, these are just my thoughts on the film. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Bye bye.